The massive warship Bloodclaw cut through the darkness of space like a blade through silk. Its hull, black as the void itself, bristled with weapons that could crack planets in half. Inside its command center, General Krikstar stood 8 feet, tall, his forearms crossed behind his back as he stared at the blue-green world spinning slowly before them. "Report," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "The target world shows signs of primitive civilization, General," reported his aide, Lieutenant Vexara. Her red eyes glowed as she read from her scanner. "They call themselves humans. Their technology is laughably weak. Their ships barely leave their own star system." Krikstar's mandibles clicked in what passed for a smile among the Zephyrian Empire. For 3,000 years his people had swept across the galaxy, conquering world after world. They were the ultimate warriors, bred for battle, living for conquest. Their motto was simple: victory through strength, peace through domination. "Excellent," Krikstar rumbled. "How long until we can begin the invasion?" "The advance fleet reports they will be in position within 3 rotations, sir. The humans won't even see us coming." But Lieutenant Vexara was wrong. The humans had already seen them. Chapter 1. The diplomatic disaster captain Sarah Chen pressed her face against the viewport of the Earth Defense Station as the alien fleet materialized on the edge of the solar system. 50 massive warships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Her hands trembled as she reached for the communication console. "This is Captain Chen of Earth Defense Command," she broadcast on all frequencies. "Unknown vessels, please identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came immediately, in perfect English that somehow sounded menacing. "I am General Krikstar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been chosen for conquest. Surrender now and your deaths will be swift." Sarah's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. "General Krikstar, I'm sure we can work something out. Would you like to meet in person? We could arrange a diplomatic meeting." There was a long pause. Then, incredibly, laughter. Deep, rumbling laughter that seemed to shake the communication channel itself. "Diplomatic meeting?" Krikstar's voice dripped with amusement. "Little human, we do not negotiate. With food." "Food?" Sarah blinked. "Oh, I see the confusion. We're not food, we're people. And we'd really like to be friends." Another pause. Longer this time. "Friends?" The word seemed foreign in Krikstar's mouth. "What is friends?" Sarah smiled, despite the circumstances. "Why don't you come aboard our station? I'll show you." What happened next would go down in galactic history as the most unusual first contact ever recorded. General Krikstar, conqueror of worlds, found himself genuinely curious about these strange creatures who wanted to be friends instead of conquered subjects. Against all military protocol and 3,000 years of Zephyrian tradition, he accepted the invitation. Chapter 2. The General's surprise. The docking bay of Earth Defense Station hummed with nervous energy as a Zephyrian shuttle landed with surprising gentleness. Captain Chen stood waiting with a small diplomatic team, all of them trying very hard not to look terrified. The shuttle's doors hissed open, and General Krikstar emerged. He was magnificent and terrible to behold. Standing over 8 feet tall, his forearms ended in claws that could tear through steel. His skin was a deep crimson marked with ritual scars that told the story of countless battles. 2 curved horns rose from his skull, and his eyes burned like red stars. Sarah Chen, all 5 feet and 4 inches of her, walked forward with a bright smile and extended her hand. "Welcome aboard, General Krikstar. I'm Sarah Chen. It's wonderful to meet you." Krikstar stared down at the tiny human female who had just walked up to a being that could crush her with one hand. She showed no fear, only genuine pleasure at his presence. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever been happy to see him arrive. "You are not afraid," he observed, his voice careful. "Why would I be afraid?" Sarah asked. You came here to talk, didn't you? That makes you a guest. I came here to accept your surrender before I destroy your world. Well, sure, that's what you said. Sarah's smile never wavered. But you're here, aren't you? That means you're curious. And curiosity is the first step to friendship. Krikstar's aide, Lieutenant Vexara, leaned close to his ear. General, this could be a trap. But Krikstar was studying Sarah Chen with new interest. In his long life, he had seen fear, hatred, desperation, and rage. He had never seen someone look at him with simple, genuine warmth. Show me, he said finally. Show me this friendship. What followed was perhaps the strangest diplomatic mission in galactic history. Sarah gave Krikstar a tour of the station, introducing him to the crew. Each human they met reacted the same way, with curiosity and welcome rather than terror. This is Chief Engineer Rodriguez, Sarah said as they entered the engineering section. Rodriguez, meet General Krikstar. Rodriguez, a grizzled man in his 50s, looked up from his console and grinned. Well, I'll be damned. You're even bigger than the report said. How do you like our little station? Krikstar blinked. No conquered species had ever asked for his opinion before. It is efficient, he said carefully. Wait till you see the mess, Hall. Rodriguez laughed. Sarah here makes the best coffee in 3 sectors. You drink coffee, General? I do not know what coffee is. Rodriguez's eyes lit up. Oh, you're in for a treat. And so it was that General Krikstar, Scourge of the Galaxy, found himself sitting in a human mess hall with a cup of coffee in his primary hands and a chocolate chip cookie in his secondary ones, while Captain Chen explained the concept of friendship. It's really quite simple, Sarah said, sipping her own coffee. Friends care about each other, they help each other, they enjoy spending time together. They share things, like coffee and cookies. Krikstar examined the cookie suspiciously. This is food? Try it, Sarah encouraged. The general took a cautious bite. His eyes widened. This is pleasant, he admitted. That's friendship too, Sarah said. Sharing things that make us happy. For the first time in his life, Krikstar was confused. These humans should be cowering before him, begging for mercy. Instead, they were giving him cookies and asking about his favorite battles as if they were sharing war stories at a reunion. I do not understand, he said finally. Are you not afraid that I will destroy your world? Sarah considered this seriously. Well, you could. You're certainly strong enough, but I don't think you want to. What makes you believe this? Because you're here, Sarah said simply. Because you're talking to me instead of shooting. Because you asked what friendship was instead of just dismissing it. I think you're curious about us. Krikstar was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that would change everything. What would happen if I chose not to conquer your world? Sarah's face lit up. Then we could really be friends. Chapter 3. The Impossible Choice. General Krikstar returned to his flagship, with his mind in turmoil. His aide, Lieutenant Vexara, was practically vibrating with confusion and concern. General, she said as soon as they were alone in his quarters. What happened on that station? You were gone for 6 hours. The invasion. Fleet is waiting for orders. Krikstar stared out at the blue world spinning below them. For the first time in his career, he didn't see a target to be conquered. He saw a home to be protected. They offered me friendship, he said quietly. Sir? The humans. They offered me friendship. He turned to face his aide. Vexara, in all our conquests, has anyone ever offered us friendship? Lieutenant Vexara's red eyes narrowed. Sir, with respect, friendship is weakness. The Empire conquers. It does not make friends. Why? The question hung in the air like a physical thing. Vexara stared at her general as if he had grown a 5th arm. Sir? Why do we conquer? Krikstar asked. Why do we destroy worlds and enslave populations? What is the purpose? To expand the Empire, to bring order to the galaxy, to prove our strength. But what comes after? Krixtar pressed. When we have conquered everything, what then? Vexara opened her mouth, then closed it. In 3,000 years of Zephyrian expansion, no one had ever asked that question. Meanwhile, on Earth, an emergency session of the United Nations was taking place. Captain Chen stood before the assembly, trying to explain what had happened. During her 6-hour meeting with the alien general, "He's not what we expected," she reported. "Yes, he's incredibly dangerous. Yes, his fleet could destroy us, but he's also curious. Lonely, I think. The Zephyrians have been conquering for so long they've forgotten how to do anything else." "So what do you suggest?" asked Secretary General Martinez. "That we just trust that this warlord has suddenly developed a conscience?" "I suggest we do what humans do best," Sarah said. "We make friends." "Captain Chen," interrupted Admiral Harrison, "this is not a neighborhood barbecue. This is an alien invasion fleet." "No," Sarah said firmly. "This is a first contact situation with a species that has never experienced friendship. They literally don't know what they're missing." She turned to address the full assembly. "Think about it. What makes humanity special? It's not our technology. We're centuries behind these guys. It's not our strength. One of them could take on 10 of us. It's our ability to connect, to empathize, to make friends with anyone, anywhere, under any circumstances." "Even with a species bred for war?" asked the representative from China. Sarah smiled. "Especially with a species bred for war. They need friends more than anyone." Back on the Zephyrian flagship, General Krixtar was having the most important conversation of his life with his ship's computer. Computer, access historical records. Search for any instance of the Empire making peaceful contact with another species. Searching. Search complete, no records found. Search for any instance of non-violent resolution to contact scenarios. Searching. Search complete, no records found. Search for any record of Zephyrian cultural activities not related to warfare. Searching. Search complete, no records found. Krixtar stared at the readout. 3,000 years of history, and every single entry was about conquest, battle, or military expansion. No art, no philosophy, no exploration for its own sake, no joy. Computer. What is the Zephyrian word for friend? Searching. Search. Complete. No translation available. Concept not found in Zephyrian language database. The general sat down heavily in his command chair. His entire species had been so focused on war that they had never developed the concept of friendship. They had become the most powerful military force in the galaxy, but at what cost? His communicator chimed. "General, incoming transmission from the human station." "Put it through." Captain Chen's face appeared on his screen, smiling as always. "Hello, General. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "I was researching," Krixtar said. "Oh? What about?" "Friendship. My computer tells me my people have no word for it." Sarah's expression grew gentle. "That just means you get to invent one." "I have been thinking about what you said, about being friends instead of conquerors." "And?" Krixtar was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What would friendship between our species look like?" Sarah's smile could have powered a small city. "Why don't we find out together?" Chapter 4. The new alliance 6 months later, the galaxy watched in amazement as the impossible happened. The Zephyrian Empire, for the first time in 3,000 years, signed not a surrender treaty but a friendship agreement. The ceremony took place on neutral ground, a small space station built jointly by human and Zephyrian engineers. It was, according to the engineers from both species, the most challenging and rewarding project any of them had ever worked on. General Krixtar, now calling himself Ambassador Krixtar, stood beside Captain Chen as they signed the historic document. Behind them, a mixed crowd of humans and Zephyrians watched with wonder. "I still can't believe this is happening," whispered Lieutenant Vexara, who had been promoted to Cultural Exchange Officer, a position that had never existed before in Zephyrian society. "Believe it," said Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had become unlikely friends with the lieutenant over their shared love of spacecraft design. This is just the beginning. He was right. In the months that followed, the friendship between humans and Zephyrians revolutionized both civilizations. The Zephyrians, who had spent millennia focused solely on military might, discovered art, music, and literature. Human teachers worked with Zephyrian scholars to develop new words for concepts like joy, wonder, and compassion. Meanwhile, humans benefited from Zephyrian technology and knowledge. Their ships became faster, their defenses stronger, and their reach extended far beyond their small solar system. But the most important change was cultural. The Zephyrians began to see strength not just in conquest, but in protection. They became the guardians of smaller civilizations rather than their destroyers. "We were wrong for 3,000 years, Ambassador Krickstar told Sarah during one of their regular coffee meetings. Strength without purpose is just destruction. But strength used to protect friends. That has meaning." "You know what the funny thing is?" Sarah replied, refilling his cup. "You were already strong enough to conquer anything. But it took friendship to make you truly powerful." The transformation wasn't without its challenges. Some Zephyrians struggled with the concept of peaceful coexistence. Some humans worried about trusting former enemies. But gradually, understanding grew. The breakthrough came when a new threat emerged from the Galactic Rim, a species of mechanical beings called the Devourers that consumed entire worlds for their resources. They had no interest in conquest or negotiation. They simply consumed and moved on. When the first Devourer scouts appeared in Zephyrian space, Ambassador Krickstar didn't hesitate. He contacted Captain Chen immediately. "Sarah," he said, his image flickering on her screen, "we need your help." "You've got it," she replied without hesitation. "What do you need?" "Everything," Krickstar said grimly. "These machines cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be befriended. They can only be stopped." What followed was the first joint human-Zephyrian military operation. Human creativity and adaptability combined with Zephyrian strength and experience created a fighting force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But more importantly, it proved that the friendship between the two species was real. They fought, side by side, protected each other's worlds and mourned each other's losses. The war against the Devourers lasted 2 years. When it was over and the mechanical threat had been driven back to the Galactic Rim, something remarkable had happened. Other species had been watching. They had seen humans and Zephyrians working together, sharing technology, protecting each other's civilians. They had seen the impossible, a warrior species that had learned to be friends. Applications for friendship agreements began arriving from across the galaxy. Epilogue. A new galaxy 5 years after first contact, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Friendship Station, the largest space station in known space, jointly operated by 17 different species. Through the massive viewports, she could see ships from dozens of worlds coming and going in peaceful commerce. "Hard to believe it all started with a cup of coffee," said a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Ambassador Krickstar approaching, carrying 2 cups of the beverage that had become a symbol of interspecies cooperation throughout the galaxy. "Actually," Sarah said, accepting her cup with a smile, "it started with a choice. You could have just conquered us. Instead, you chose to be curious. And you chose to see a friend instead of an enemy," Krickstar replied. "Perhaps that is what makes humans so remarkable. You see the possibility of friendship everywhere." Through the viewport, they watched a small human ship dock next to a massive Zephyrian destroyer. The contrast was almost comical. The human vessel looked like a toy next to the warship. But both crews would greet each other as friends. "You know what I've learned?" Sarah said thoughtfully. "Everyone wants friends. Even species bred for war. Even machines sometimes. The trick is being brave enough to offer friendship first. And being wise enough to accept it when it's offered," Krickstar added. They stood, in comfortable silence, watching the busy traffic of their new galactic community. Ships from the crystalline chorus traveled alongside vessels from the aquatic deep swimmers. Former enemies worked side by side on trade agreements and cultural exchanges. "What do you think comes next?" Sarah asked. Krikstar's mandibles clicked, and what she had learned was his version of a smile. "I think we keep making friends. The galaxy is a very big place, and there are still many species out there who have never experienced true friendship." "Well then," Sarah said, raising her coffee cup in a toast, "we'd better get started." As if summoned by her words, an alert chimed throughout the station. A new signal had been detected from the outer rim, another unknown species making first contact. Sarah and Krikstar looked at each other and grinned. "Shall we go make some new friends?" Sarah asked. "Lead the way, my friend," Krikstar replied, and together they headed for the docking bay, ready to prove once again that in a galaxy full of wonders and terrors, the greatest strength of all was the simple human ability to make friends with everyone, even former enemies who had been bred for war. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly how humanity liked it.